Welcome to
Crazy, right?
A podcast
Be your own person.
for those affected by
Crazy, right?
mental health,
I wanted to just try it.
Crazy,
It's something that I've struggled with for a while.
featuring live improvised music
Now I finally got my head right again.
by your host,
am I right? Crazy,
It feels good to talk about it.
right? Crazy, right?
Dave Asher.
My guest today is LaMark. He is a composer, pianist, and recording engineer born and raised in Chicago. Carl, thanks for joining me here today online. Let's connect our computers and see what happens. I believe that we met for the first time in probably around, could be 2013. Does that sound right to you? You were learning how to do improv piano for comedy. That's with me. It was what is your recollection as to the first time that you and I met?
It was, I think it was the first week of April 2013. It was a week before the Boston bombing. I remember that because we had our first lesson, and then the next lesson I had to cancel because I had to drive out to Boston to just make sure some family were all right, help out there.
And when you went out to Boston, what was the result of that inquiry?
Well, everyone was fine. I had a couple of relatives who were nearby the parade and the explosion. And yeah, everyone was just very shaken. So my role out there was more moral support than anything else. And it was kind of spur of the moment kind of thing where, oh my God, what can I do to help? Oh, at least the very least thing I can do is drive out there. So yeah, because I've done that. Yeah, going to the East Coast thing plenty of times. Driven New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. So yeah, it was just a good solid day of driving.
When you mentioned you go on road trips with some degree of regularity, it sounds like. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I used to. Yeah, I went out to Boston plenty of times, especially when I was doing the Berkeley thing, getting my certification in orchestration and arranging. So I went out there almost every other week or so during the tail end of it when I was finishing kind of my dissertation type of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was before Zoom and Skype became accepted everywhere. So it was an expensive alternative just driving. Yeah.
Let's get into music a little bit. What is your first experience that you can recall in life with music?
With music, I remember being around 3 years old and being in the car with my mother, and I think the station was 93.5 or 93.7, whatever the oldie station was back then, and the song Barbara Ann came on, you know, a ba 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 Barbara Ann, ba 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 ba. You know, that 3-part harmony, and I think I made my mother find a recording of it, and I would just kind of listen to it on repeat over and over and over again. Yeah, good memory.
And so that's 3 years old.
3 years old, yeah.
And at what point did you start then playing the piano or any instrument at that point?
Around the same age, really. We had a piano that my father found that a neighbor had put on the curb, I guess. It was this kind of really ornate wooden thing, not much to talk about in terms of its sound quality. But it worked, and I started just fooling around with it.
So before you took proper lessons, you were tinkering around on the piano, is that right?
Yeah, just trying to imitate certain sounds that I heard, or I think some family members would sing something and I would try to replicate it. And I think I kind of put myself on the radar that way as having some sort of, innate ability or aptitude for it.
When you say put yourself on the radar, are you referring to that you got to get through to your folks to understand that you were a musical child?
Yeah, in that sense, but it didn't really take that much effort. I'm the youngest of three, so I guess my parents really doted on me. They were very supportive in anything I did, so it came as kind of a surprise, I guess, considering I don't have many musical people at all in my family. I think I'm the only one that I've ever met, or that I know of. I think my brother has a good sense of pitch. He can whistle things, but other than that, I think he gave up the clarinet after a year or so. And that's another distinct memory I have, is picking up his clarinet that was in a closet near our living room. And I started playing around with that around age 6, 7 years old. That was my second instrument, I guess.
And at what point would you say that was there a point where in your mind you got to a point where you felt this is really what you wanted to make your focus of your life on? If that is fair to say that your focus of your life is on music, was there a point, a memory in your mind of like a time when you said, well, I'm acquiring instruments, I'm acquiring skills, I'm acquiring a desire, am I acquiring a dream? At what point, if there was one, that you can recall where you made a decision in your mind, I am and I'm going to be a musician?
I would say, I think around age 7 or 8, when I made my debut with a small string ensemble in a full concerto. That was kind of, from that point on, my life completely revolved around music. And it came kind of just as a given. There really wasn't any decision to be had, even though my parents never told me to practice, never told me, this is what you are going to do, that type of thing. They made me fairly autonomous in that respect, so there was no pressure to do it. It was just something I always did over and over again. Just every week, going to lessons. If I wanted to listen to something that interested me, especially back then when you kind of had to go to the library to get those old CDs and VHSs that they used to have, to really get a first-hand knowledge of it. This was before YouTube. I was born in '87, so that my whole development, I kind of had to piecemeal it through library outsourcing or being in a facility that had people who actually played the music. But this isn't to say that I didn't have a lot of music in the household to listen to. There was always some film playing in one room or radio. My brother, he had a full gym in the basement, and they played a lot of music down there constantly. So it wasn't as though I lived in a quiet household. But to get to the stuff that I was actually studying, it took on a lot more effort than I guess it would today. I really am jealous of some people.
And given all of that, I think, would it be fair to say that you would describe yourself then as a self-starter?
Yes. Yeah, I don't really tend to let opportunities just find me. I'm always kind of, for better or worse, trying to social engineer a situation that could be in my benefit.
When you say for better or worse, is there an example first thing that jumps to your mind of a time, music or otherwise related, when you attempted to socially engineer something and it ended up for the worse?
Not many missteps in that regard, really. But as I got older, you started recognizing some people who are way too gung-ho isn't the right word, but trying to do everything possible to put themselves in the situation where they're meeting the right people. They are, for lack of a better word, networking, just constantly introducing themselves, and for the sole purpose of just kind of getting some lead forward into the business, whatever it may be. But I'm really more, even though I'm a self-starter, I've never kind of willingly. I hate networking. I don't like going up to someone in a disingenuous way for the sole reason of getting something out of it. Either career-wise or through a direct gig, something like that. I'm very uncomfortable with that.
And would you say that there's potentially an interaction between your experience talking with someone who you don't know very well, whether it's about music or just a casual sense? Would you say that there's an aspect to which anxiety plays a factor in that, how that plays out?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and my anxiety doesn't seem to be triggered in the moment of interaction. It mainly revolves around all those things that lead up to it. Making a date to attend an event, taking the time to make yourself presentable, driving or taking public trans to the event, going through this and that of, that really brings me anxiety, but it kind of disappears the moment that, I'm in the situation. It's the same thing with performance. I never have performance anxiety or stage fright. It's kind of completely foreign to me. But everything leading up to it, arriving at a venue, getting warmed up, dealing with the logistics, and even then it's not really anxiety, it's more annoyance, agitation, a feeling of being inconvenienced a lot of the time, even though, it's not in an entitled way being inconvenienced, but all right, one thing after another, now there's a hurdle we have to get over. Oh, the sound guy hasn't fixed this yet. Have to just kind of wait it out. Yeah.
Do you get a sense when you're interacting, say, for example, with a sound person at a venue, or you're doing a performance and there are other moving pieces involved, do you get a sense of frustration at all if you sense like other people aren't doing their jobs properly?
All the time, really. Even when it's a job that I'm not, privy to. Just, you go to a Walgreens and a person has basically one job and they can't even seem to do that right sometimes. I'm being an asshole in saying that, but it's in those times where gigs are not plentiful, like now, and you're on the phone with someone in a call center and they can't seem to do their job without any hiccups, even the simplest thing. I think I gave my age to someone I was applying for or something the other day, and it took them like 5 minutes to do that right. It's, I find myself really making a fist and white-knuckling it. It's, I don't think I'm that uncommon in that respect.
I'm curious, Carl, if we could, would you be open to exploring that moment in an improvised song? I have your back here. If it were potentially that dynamic of you on the line with someone in a call center or someone at a Walgreens or something, and what does that feel like? That I'm sure everyone can relate to it, but potentially those of us with anxiety or depression might get even more frustrated by those moments in life. Could you talk us through and maybe sing us through your perspective of being stuck in a situation where you are up against that wall of another individual and how they are processing a situation in a way that is not to your liking? Are you open to trying that, Carl?
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Great.
You only have one job. You only have one job. Why am I standing here, wasting my time in here? you only had one job. Why does it take you so long just to handle money? Why does it take you so long just to handle money? Let me get behind there and make this all go faster for the 17 people behind me. You only have one job to make my day easier.
Okay, cool. All right. How did that feel for you, Carl?
Very awkward. Because there's no way to enter that premise without the speaker sounding like an asshole. It really.
Do you feel like I know for myself, I sometimes will even define myself, maybe not in the current moment or current stage of my life, but there's definitely been times in my life when either other people's assessment of me or my own assessment of myself is that, I'm an asshole. Do you find yourself ever thinking of yourself that way in terms of like that other people, like you think maybe other people think I'm an asshole, or it's like, I actually kind of think of myself as an asshole. Can you relate to that at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like yesterday I went to the store and I had no idea that there was a shortage on change nationwide. And yeah, everyone in the store was kind of a little freaked out. What do you mean I have to pay by debit? I'm like, whatever. I don't carry cash anyway. But then I walk outside and there was a homeless person wanting some change. And I felt like an asshole and I said, I don't carry cash. Yeah.
Right. Now, you mentioned prior to the beginning of our interview that you have clinical depression. Would you relate to me potentially your first experience with a depressive episode or a moment of dark depressive thought?
It had to have been around 12 or 14, somewhere around the beginning of high school. I just started isolating myself from friends. I lived in a neighborhood where everyone just congregated in the center park, right just outside our doors. And we would all play there every single day, doing whatnot. And then I just started making up excuses of why I couldn't go out. And in retrospect, that was a very self-isolating act where I just wanted to be alone and do nothing, just sit on the couch.
In those times, what was your relationship with music like at that point? Were you not playing music because you were depressed, or were you maybe exploring that sorrow musically? When you're in that particular instance, when you had that degree of depression, what was your relationship with music at that time?
Well, I was still practicing constantly for 5-6 hours a day, and it really did become almost this automatic thing where I felt no real connection to it, except when the depression would get really bad and it had this odd thing of making it even more personal, as though you could feel every note much better, you can hear everything much better. You might have low energy and you might have a listless feeling, but at the same time, everything becomes very much in high def. And every note, every chord, every gesture just seems to have this immediate effect that you have a response to.
You mentioned that an experience of having everything be in high def. I can definitely relate to that myself in periods of mania when life sort of goes into that high def mode. Aside from depression, are there other situations, whether they involve self-medication with drugs or any elevated moods when you would describe that you've had an experience of either music or life being in high def?
Well, I say that I think I used that as a way of saying that everything sounds so detailed, and I could more than just make out what the tone of it is. I could tell you exactly what piano or what kind of guitar or what type of bass something is being played on. I could tell you where the frequency range is on an equalizer. This is in the high mids. This is around 3,000 kilohertz, that type of thing. It's almost like all this specialized knowledge that you hammer into yourself just snaps into place, and you're able to codify exactly what you're hearing. And it takes on a kind of a romantic effect too, where you feel it's very hard explaining this. You have this a lot of times when people have this depression, they romanticize it in a self-pitying type of way, but when you listen to something like Chopin or Liszt or Schumann or something even faintly romantic, it seems to take on a lot more significance in that moment rather than just ignoring it. And it's not mania, it's just a shifting of where your focus really is.
Do you feel a sense of an identification with yourself, Carl? Do you think you would describe yourself as a tortured artist?
Tortured, but very rarely by art, if that makes sense. It's almost like, I think, I definitely made the decision a long time ago that as long as I take care of the music, it will take care of me. It doesn't matter how I felt in particular, spans of time. It's like as long as I dedicate myself in a regimented way to being as productive as possible at this and make sure that my technique or my musicianship doesn't backslide, as long as I'm always prepared, then the music would take care of me. But I've never felt alienated for being an artist. I've never felt different for being an artist. A lot of people will try to make you feel that way, but I'm usually able to just detune that or keep it out of my range of hearing mentally so it doesn't echo.
I'm sorry, I think I might have missed that because of the connection, but there's something that you're experiencing but you keep out of range? Is that...
I'm able to block out or reframe negative talk, negative thoughts, or whatever negative comments or comments that I take as negative, rightly or wrongly. I can say therapy helps a lot with that, in reframing certain things, including your inner expectations. If you do have a setback, you can reframe it and find a way to make it seem like an opportunity. It's more like that. Or sometimes you could just completely tune it out and block it out. But it's a rare occasion when people will actually make you feel like a piece of crap for being an artist or wanting to be an artist.
And you never make yourself feel that way because of a lack of belief in your own art?
No. It's a small favor from the universe that my ego tends to protect itself in one way or another. Or I think you have to have a strong ego the farther and farther... Is it further and further or further and further into the arts? And you have to constantly be in this oscillating state of having to have skin that's almost transparent because you have to be able to feel everything to create. You're supposed to be in touch with your emotions, but then when it comes time to perform in front of a lot of people rather than being alone in a practice room and you put yourself open to criticism, you kind of have to have skin of a rhino. You really do. And you just have to barrel through whatever comments, good or bad, that people have about you, and you can't really take note of it. At least that's my experience or my way of coping with situations.
So you mentioned that you've developed thick skin,
Yeah.
particularly with respect to your art. Is that fair?
Yeah, towards most things. I'm as vain as the next person, and, I went bald at the age of 21, so you kind of had to develop it very quickly.
And I'm impressed at that assessment. I'm not sure that I doubt it necessarily. I just think it's a very, in my experience, having thick. I guess having thick skin does not come particularly easy to me. So when people, I think sometimes it depends on the messenger as well as the message.
Oh, yeah,
But,
definitely. Like, if it comes from someone that you actually respect a great deal, if it's a mentor or a teacher or someone like that, yeah, those people in your life, you give a certain more weight to their words. And that'll test you, it really would. It really will. And yeah, I've gotten kind of down in the dumps about it a few times. When someone I really admire will kind of glibbishly say something that can come off as a put down or something like that. Like, I've had a few master classes with composers and pianists that was the case. Actually, I was on right when I was diagnosed in April and feeling just miserable. My advisor from grad school, I won't say his name, but he had a film come out. Whoop, mic slipping here.
I'm going to take that opportunity to jump in. When you say diagnosed in April, could you just clarify for our listeners what you were diagnosed with in April?
COVID-19.
I think also we had a little bit of a notification go off on your side. So in April of this year, 2020, you were diagnosed with COVID-19.
Yep.
And you were, and at that time, it sounded like there was some feedback that was coming into your life. Some
Feedback?
not audio feedback, but I resume that story you were telling. I just wanted to.
Oh yeah, we can backtrack to the illness, but that's not the main part of this story.
Right.
Well, anyway, my advisor from grad school, who, I would spend 3 hours at a time talking with this guy. Very personal stuff a lot of the times, a lot of facts about being an artist. And I finally saw a film that he scored after I think it had a long legal battle behind it in terms of the production, but it finally got a release. A friend of mine had a screener, so I watched it while I was flat on my back, sick. And I gave my former advisor my honest feedback that some things did not seem to gel the best in the editing room, which happens all the time. Directors will cut up stuff that you do, and he took it the wrong way completely. Even though it was a rocky production, he had to sue the producer and director because they ran out of money and still owed him like $63,000 or something like that. But I felt our relationship was such that I could speak to him honestly about something. If I have a feeling that something was rocky behind the scenes, and it turns out to be the fact, you wouldn't expect him to have reacted the way he reacted, which was completely defensive, saying, he said something to the effect of, I thought you would have had something more constructive to say about this. So many people worked so hard on this. And keep in mind, this is a guy in his 60s. He is a key figure in the New York scene, and he's been involved in so many developments in classical music for so long. I'm like, dude, if you are this old and you still are this defensive about even a small comment on my part, your problem isn't with me. It really isn't. That was my takeaway from that, and we patched things up,
What would you say? I'm imagining now this 60-year-old influencer in the field. If you could project yourself 20 or 30 years ahead, what would you like to be your wheelhouse in terms of what people are looking up to you for?
It's a good question, but it's difficult to answer because I don't really do much for approval of anyone else, really. And I know this sounds like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, but the reactions of other people vis-a-vis my art or what I create or whatever project I'm involved in, I really don't care. I'm not really beholden to other people for validation. It's something I discovered while I was sick, but we can always get back to that.
Yeah, I guess I would like to get back to that. If for no other reason than to be topical in the moment here. It is July of 2020, and you say you were diagnosed with COVID-19 in April, and you were adding there on the break of that sentence that that experience gave you some insight into potentially maybe your need for self-validation, that you can't count on getting it from other places, and maybe not relying on that to feel good about what you were doing. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
No, it was being in what felt like the lowest point of my life and feeling for a couple weeks there that, I might not get through this okay. There might be lasting damage or I might die. I just took stock of things, and I don't think looking back on it, there's very little that I've done, again, for better or worse, that I have done very little trying to seek the approval of other people in regards to art and life generally. And, I've lost friendships over it. I've lost opportunities. But at the same time, when you're on your deathbed and you look back on not being beholden to other people for validation, you have very few regrets. You really do. You really won't. I mean, that's just my experience.
Would you describe yourself as at all a religious or spiritual person?
Not at all, but I know a great deal about it.
So you do you feel like you have a spirit?
Do I have a soul?
Right. In your opinion, whatever.
Well, I believe that there's a lot to being human that is not easily quantifiable. Like if you record something and you try to put it into a grid, into a strict beat, no matter how hard you try, and it's very rare that you'll be exactly on the beats. You'll be a little behind it, you'll be a little in front of it. And that's what really creates a sense of swing or a sense of groove. I think of the soul in much the way that a groove is thought of, even under a tiny microscope like that. It's all these factors that you can't really be very precise about, but it's there, and when it's absent. When something's being played by a machine rather than being played by a human. Your soul is a little before the beat sometimes. Does that make sense?
It does. It's really beautiful, Carl.
Just made it up. I swear. No, that's sincere. That was sincere.
I'm sorry, that's in what?
That's sincere. That was sincere on my part. Just kind of, yeah.
Well, I assume it can be made up and sincere at the same time, correct?
Well, I think your livelihood counts on that.
Yeah, exactly, right, yeah. Sort of a rhetorical question, I guess.
Yeah. Would you mind talking a little bit about the developments in the past few weeks? You don't have to get into the controversy, but how do you feel losing the place that you've worked for nearly 20 years?
It's a challenge to talk about it, really.
Well, you can tell me if you feel. Do you feel? Well, you don't have to go into the specifics, like I said, but I just want to know: do you feel a sense of loss? How do you feel about the future? That type of thing.
Well, as the interviewer on this show, I'm going to throw it back to your court.
Okay.
There was a time when, and the circumstances were different, but not altogether to some of the things that I've experienced. There was a time when you worked at I.O. Do you recall that?
Yes, I performed twice there, and I was pretty damn drunk the second time.
And do you recall what, does alcohol play a role in your artistic process or your life? What role would you say that alcohol has or plays in your life, whether it's in the arts or whether in your social life? What does alcohol mean to you?
It has played nothing but a negative influence, especially in the past 10 years when I used it as a self-medication for my anxiety. Or I would feel a sense of impending doom arise over me, and I would need some way to take care of it. And that's taken quite a few forms over the past 10 years.
So going back to that period when you worked at I.O. a couple shows, do you recall the decision? Was there a decision point or your mindset prior to the show when you decided to start drinking?
As far as I recollect, and as these things go, I decided to have a drink before the show, and one drink became a few drinks to the point where, I essentially blacked out.
And would you describe yourself as an addict or an alcoholic?
I have no dependence. I have either psychological or physical. But I have engaged in alcohol abuse, and it's kind of two separate things.
What would you say is the difference between alcohol abuse and alcohol dependence?
Well, alcohol dependence is when you have genuine psychological or physical withdrawals from it. But at this point, I've been about 4 or 5 months without even having a beer, and I don't really miss it at all.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Well, it's just things are financially tight in these times, and I just do without, really. And it kind of coincided with the medication that I had been taking was actually leading to a lot of the negative psychological effects that I was experiencing. And since I've discontinued the medication after 10 years, I have not had a single panic attack or feeling of dread. And I'm generally very happy most days. So it doesn't feel like I have anything that I'm treating anymore.
So you would say, as a result of medication, your day-to-day life is not filled with anxiety or depression. Is that safe to say?
Well, absence of medication, yes.
I'm sorry. So you're not currently on any medication for depression or anxiety?
No, not for 4 months now. But prior to that, starting in 2010, I always had very bad insomnia. For my entire life, I'd be able to stay up for a couple days without any effort. But when I graduated undergrad and I moved back in to help take care of my mother when she was sick, getting rest on the regular and feel just a sense of calm, it didn't seem to be available to me. So my doctor recommended an antidepressant and Xanax to help with when things were very bad. But the Xanax turned into the whole problem.
What does that mean, the Xanax turned into the whole problem? Would you unpack that for me a little bit?
Well, you're familiar with what it does to a person, right?
Well, let's give a little bit of an explanation of that. I know it's well, why don't you go into it for all of us here?
Well, Xanax, Ativan, Valium, they all belong to a class of drugs called benzodiazepines. And it causes your body to release GABA. It's a neurotransmitter that relaxes you. It's what you feel. It's what makes you sleepy at night.
Okay, and then how did this instigate issues with you?
because in a very short period of time, if I would take it for more than 2 days or so, I would immediately start to feel what I later learned is called akathisia. Big Greek word there. It's a feeling of always needing to be, or you always feel like you're being propelled. You're completely restless. You feel like someone's prodding you to constantly move. It makes it impossible to sleep, to concentrate, and just causes more and more insomnia. So I would be awake during the worst of it, sometimes for 3 weeks straight. And I would nod out here and there for, and get some rest. But yeah, it really is a nightmare. And this went on for 10 years because very, very few people have that reaction. And yeah, it doesn't feel right. Some doctors don't see the problem with if you're taking X amount of Xanax over X amount of time, why would you feel this way when in fact the benzodiazepine is the problem?
And I'm really sorry you experienced that. And just to get the timing of it, this was a roughly 10-year period where you were essentially on this Xanax, and it was a bad call, it sounds like, to be on that Xanax. Is that correct?
Yeah. I would have a few days of where it would help, but then it just became, a nightmare. And I would go off the medication, and then I would have, if you're on it for more than 2 weeks at a time, you will experience some sense of withdrawal as well. So it just compounds the problem. It took my doctor retiring and my insurance lapsing, and then I had to go through the process of getting my insurance back and find a new general practitioner where I did not have access to it in any form, or any benzodiazepines of any form. So after kind of completely detoxing from it, I finally entered a phase where no withdrawal, no sense of restlessness that accompanies it. And it's really a combination of restlessness and feelings of impending doom is the best way to qualify it, I think. Yeah.
That sounds very difficult to manage. During that period, how would you describe what... That was a roughly 10-year period, is that correct? Like the overall arc of that experience, about 10-year period?
Yeah, I was given it first probably in October of 2010, and I was on and off, constantly in the process of getting off it, going through withdrawals until January of this year.
And so it sounds like there would probably be a lot of ups and downs during that period.
Oh, yeah. Imagine having all these symptoms and then having to deal with, your mother going through 200 hospitalizations, and dying, taking care of my sister who has special needs, taking care of my father and then losing my father. Yeah.
Do you feel, and you said you see a therapist currently, is that correct?
Not currently. I just regained my insurance, and I've been having kind of these phone screening things leading up to an actual appointment. But, I have talked to therapists in the past, but it's been about 2 years or so now.
What do you make of... So you volleyed off a lot of struggles and difficulties that your family has been going through, and your role in being a support system through a lot of this, and coping with loss, and it all came out so quickly.
We're talking about 10 years of a life, and it's been very, very turbulent.
I guess I mean conversationally, in terms of the interview, these things are each in of themselves perhaps worthy of an entire episode of a mental health podcast.
Yeah.
So why don't you maybe select the first one that comes to mind, with respect to you caring for or mourning a family member. The first one that comes to mind. And perhaps here's a little experiment, Carl, for the artists in us. If I were to play some music here, potentially, and I'm not going to ask you to sing, but if you could potentially put yourself as the main character in a tragedy or a comedy or an opera, and you were to describe sort of the screenplay or the story of you with respect to this, I'll use the phrase cross to bear, with respect to some of these things. Would you improvise the story of Carl with respect to that familial loss or obligation, and share with that kind of from an omniscient perspective of looking down what that experience is for Carl? Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, let's see if I can put myself in the third person here. It's 2010, and this kid has graduated. He's very talented, but he has to move back into the suburbs because his mother is dying, and he doesn't sleep for the better part of weeks, months at a time, because he's either calling an ambulance or he's going to the hospital, sleeping in a waiting room, just over and over again. The economy hasn't really recovered since 2008, so it's difficult finding a job with a philosophy and English language degree. So he starts working in jobs that he feels like are really beneath him, but he can't seem to keep them for that long because he constantly has to take days off because his mother is going through one emergency or procedure after another, and no one else can really take care of it but him. And eventually she just gets worse and worse, gets a transplant, spends a great deal of time recovering in a nursing home, and his family just puts it on him to take care of it all, of being communicative with the doctors, explaining things to them that they never remember you saying. And you have the feeling that you're taking care of your family, but the same family are the ones that are making you feel bad about yourself for not moving on with your life. But you're telling yourself, if no one takes care of this for his mother, who is? You have all the losses and everything else. That was the most, I guess you could say, traumatizing, PTSD-inducing. Yeah, and after she's gone, he's tasked with just trying to move on, but something in his family life just keeps popping up for him to take care of. And that brings our character here to 2019 when his father finally passes away. And he's kind of free to do with what he wants, but he already feels like in his early 30s, even though he's accomplished a lot, despite everything, that he does feel sometimes like he lost on the best years to develop his career. I think that's a good place to stop that narrative.
Definitely. Really incredible, Carl. If you're open, I'd like to pick up on that notion of feeling like the best years have been lost in some way. Would you say that you mentioned earlier that you feel a sense of being at peace? Is that still resonating in the moment now that you have a sense of peace?
Yes, and I think for the better part of a year after my father passed, and the contrary feelings arose that maybe I've missed out on a good chunk of my life. And the few months since the illness and the feelings of calm beginning to settle in, I'm very proud of everything I've done and what I've become. There's no other point in my life where I really would have been capable of doing some things that, not many people in the Chicago music community are capable of doing. I mean, I'm a trained composer, I'm a high-level pianist, I'm a producer, I have knowledge of just all these tools that other people didn't have time to learn for one reason or another. But since I was living at home and taking care of family, the only things I really had to do was to learn all this stuff, a lot of times on my own. So I'm thankful for having the opportunity and having this greater sense of agency I have over everything I create. I don't have to rely on anyone to do anything for me, recording or otherwise. And yeah, just reflecting on that and framing my life in that way, I can't say for sure it contributed to, the sense of calm and peace of not having many regrets in life. But yeah, it probably played a role.
When you say it played a role, I think I understand what you're talking about there. The 10 years of the 10-year opera. Would you just clarify when you play a role in a sense of feeling? What is played a role in what? Could you just restate? I think the audio cut out a little bit there. Could you just restate something played a role in something else? Could you just clarify that sentence for me?
My realizing that I didn't waste all this time in taking care of my family, that I did what was right, but I also was able to accomplish 4 degrees, 16 hours of written music, maintained my piano technique. Yeah, reflecting on all that and not regretting that time I had, all the time I had to develop really specialized knowledge and entered a space where I don't have to rely on anyone to do anything for me in terms of my creative practice. I don't have to rely on anyone as an expert above me. And that played a big role in my sense of calm these days.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carl. I follow you on social media, and I'm wondering if you would potentially, if there's a connection or relationship between that sense of power and self-reliance in some of your recent performances online with respect to playing marathon sessions of composers such as Satie.
I didn't think we'd get to the Satie thing. Yeah, that was an exercise completely in self-autonomy, because I had just moved to the city around September of this year, last year, and I was just trying to hit the road running and find projects and collaborators, and it just seemed like one thing after another, the project would always fall through, or someone else would not keep up their end of a bargain, or collaboratively it just wasn't a good match. It seemed like it was happening over and over and over again. So I just thought to myself, after feeling a little bit, down, what can I do that I don't have to rely on anyone for? And, I kicked around a few ideas regarding a solo recital, but to do a proper recital at the level that I was thinking, I would need 6 to 8 months of preparation to learn the whole program, practice the hell out of it, fine-tune it, play in front of some smaller groups before going up to something larger at the Chicago Cultural Center. And I just thought to myself, what's something I could do in a month? and wouldn't require the help of anyone else to do. And I think there was some discussion with a professor of mine regarding Eric Satie, and I couldn't really understand why he admired him so much. And then I came across The Vexations. Actually, I have a copy still over here. And I started looking at it, and that planted a seed, and a week later I was shaving, and I couldn't think of anything doubtful of why I couldn't perform this solo and be the first American to do it. So it just became more a matter of finding the venue, booking it, promoting it a little bit on WFMT, and performing it. And there was apprehension there for one of the few times in my life because I had no idea what would happen if I played past 8 hours or 5 hours. I had no idea. No one could tell me what was going to happen.
Well, I was able to catch a lot of that, and I was just really impressed by the commitment not only to set that up and believe in yourself to be able to do it, but then, of course, to actually do it is so very impressive, and in fact, a testament to what you're talking about in terms of proving your sense of self-reliance.
Yeah, and even though there wasn't a lot of specialized knowledge in that, it was a lot of coping with that situation by the seat of your pants as it was happening. Like my hands began to puff up after 3 hours. I had to consciously slow my heart rate and make the circulation in my hands go down and let the draftiness of the performance space just lower and lower my body temperature so my hands wouldn't feel that way. And then talk to any orthopedist and they'll tell you that you do anything repetitively for 4 hours or more, you're going to start to feel pain. So I had to come to the realization very quickly that, okay, I'm going to feel actual pain, but will I be able to play in such a way that I'm not going to permanently hurt myself by doing this?
Do you see, Carl, and if you could maybe take us home here with a sense of potentially, if this again were some sort of a movie of some sort of your life, could you take us home potentially with a connection between a 10-year battle through family illness and death and tragedy, and persevering and coming out the other side, and maybe map that along a journey of an extended solo piano performance and weathering the storms of physical challenges and bodily extreme inconveniences to get through this piece and come out the other side. Would you finish up our movie like that?
Well, isn't that kind of a downside? There's a lot of downside in thinking of your life in a narrative that way, and thinking that, yeah, you may have had success at this point in your life and that has made everything that has gone up to it worth it. And a lot of times it is, but I avoid thinking in those terms. Like, I only feel like I'm as good as what my next performance is, or what my next project is, or my next composition. The movie is still going, even after
Absolutely.
this broadcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is? I totally hear all of that, Carl. What is the next chapter then? Not as a movie, but just literally, what are you working on next, Carl? Or what would you like to work on next? If you got to pick and choose, whether it's with somebody else or on your own, and pie in the sky here. Don't worry about limitations. If you could work on any project next, what would it be?
Well, I actually have about 7 projects I'm working on now. First one, or the most important one right now, is getting my own company off the ground. And with a few friends from grad school.
What sort of company?
Music production. Well, music sync production, or what's the best how to explain it, but making a catalog of music that can be used for placement in media, be it television, trailers, short films, commercials, web series. It's a lot of work because you have to build a large catalog. I've been kind of writing 1 minute to 3 minutes of music a day, at least getting the sketch of a track down. And trying to find other composers that we want to make part of our catalog and let us take over the messy business part of it, of finding the people who want to buy it. That's one thing. Another is I was contacted by a family out of California. They had a relative who was a film composer in the 30s, and they found a composition of his that was never performed, and he died in the Holocaust. And the score only exists as a handwritten manuscript. So I'm in the process of producing an album of that music. And then I have a bunch of compositions that I started sketching while ill, all chamber music, about percussion ensemble, string quartet that I've been kind of working on for 2 years that's finally has direction to it, 2 percussion trios, a solo flute piece, a piece for alto sax and acoustic guitar.
And you mentioned, not to cut that off, that all sounds wonderful, and I really think the sync company, those projects sound awesome to me, and I think the sync company is the making cues just for those who don't know, the syncing, coming up with cues for movies and commercials, etc. All sound like wonderful projects, and championing this composer. You mentioned earlier that you are not particularly motivated or concerned with what other people think of you. Do you recall saying that? Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, personally in my day-to-day, yeah, it is. But I kind of see where you're going with that. How do I go from not caring to empathizing and knowing what other people want or how they'll react? Or how do I create something that that can be impactful to people and have significance to them? I mean, I'm not autistic, Dave. I know what people want. I know what type of story beats they expect, and I know how to hit them. It's just, it's...
And the motivation to... I hear that. And that sense of self-assuredness in your musical ability, do you feel like there's a sense of wanting to show that to people and have that be recognized in people? Or again, is it something that you knowing yourself about yourself is enough for you?
I think there's... I wouldn't call it a sense of wanting to be seen, really. I never feel like I am not seen. It's a hard time to hide, I guess, sometimes, depending on what type of social situation you're in. If you're in the classical music scene, and do you walk into a room and have to proclaim yourself to be a big deal or something like that, or of having some type of notoriety? That's something I really don't feel that often. But the sense of proving myself, who am I proving myself to, is what I would ask. It's not difficult for me to impress with my abilities, so it doesn't really factor in that often, I guess. I've never been in a situation where someone can just ignore what I do. It sounds terrible, I know, but...
So, but unpacking that a little bit, you've never been in a situation where people can ignore what you do, but at the same time, your story is that you don't care whether people ignore you or not?
I don't... Yeah, it's that contradiction that's... Yeah, you can't miss what you've already have. You can't feel a longing for something that always seems to have been present in your life. It's like, I was watching The Aviator the other day, and where Howard Hughes is having a dinner with Kate Blanchett's family in that movie, and then he just pipes up that, yeah, you guys only care about money because you've always had it. So in that very same sense, I don't feel, in a very privileged way, I've never felt like I haven't been recognized in one way or another. So how can I say that I've never really longed for it, I guess you would say? Because it hasn't been difficult for me to get. Either whether I wanted it or not.
Does that indicate that at sometimes you were receiving more attention than you were comfortable with?
Yeah, definitely.
Would you? Yes.
Well, even in high school, it was just known what I was doing, and then everyone just referred to you as the piano kid or whatever, even when you barely played at the school or in front of these people. And then everyone seemed to know who you were. So you would just try to not talk to anyone or try to just stay, I guess, shy-ish and just try to just find something that resembled privacy. At least that's how I felt back then. It always seemed like people would always know what I was up to, even without social media being a thing back then. And, kids, they would just not exactly bully, but tease you a little bit, like, oh, he thinks he's so good since he's doing this and that. I'm like, I haven't told anyone about any of this. I don't want any attention from this. It's a strange dichotomy, it really is.
Do you feel in some ways, getting back to maybe some of those issues of meaning of life or soul or things like that, do you in some ways feel like you're on a path that has in some ways already been composed?
I don't believe in fate. I don't really believe in fates.
Do you ever get a sense, do you ever make sense of this phenomenon in your life of people knowing about your situation without you having to do much to educate them about it, it sounds like? Do you ever make anything of that in terms of that people... Does it ever make you paranoid? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sometimes. And yeah, I kind of play things close to the chest and don't fully explain myself. Which is one of the reasons I don't teach that much, because I don't like explaining something that just kind of comes naturally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a weird situation to be in, isn't it? I mean, not having to just, ask for attention or something like that. It seems to just kind of follow you. You can't just be a guy in a shop. You feel like someone's looking at you sometimes for whatever reason. Maybe it's just I'm a weird-looking guy. But the inclination has been more to not be the center of attention or wanting not to be.
I guess I'm wondering, do you have any sort of explanation? Have you if you don't have it, it's not that is incompletes my thought. I'm hearing that you experience life as people are paying a lot of attention to you.
Well, I'm not saying they are, but it just seems like I don't seek the validation because it seems like it's already out there.
Got it.
Yeah, I remember when I got my MFA, and at the graduation ceremony, usually your last advisor for that term says something about you. And you know how it is sometimes, it was what you would expect. Such and such is a great pianist, such a good person, they're this, they're that. My advisor, Don DiNicola, he didn't say anything about anything I did. He went into a Taoist stream of consciousness thing, and at the end of it, he's like, "We just expect great things from Carl. That's just the way it is. We have no doubts of what he can do or what he has done." And he was kind of putting it out there as a question, like, "What is it about you?" I was kind of pissed at him for the longest time about that. He said nothing. He said nothing about my abilities as a musician or my qualities as a person or a friend. After studying with him for a year, 3-hour conversation a week, everything. It's just like, really, dude? Really? But I guess that's Don for you. You have to know him. He likes to be disruptive, especially even if it's something as important as a graduation speech.
What do you think? What would you have liked for him to have said, or what would you know what I'm saying? Or let me ask a different question. What do you think was the meaning of what he said? What did you take away from that, if anything? Whether it was about him or about yourself?
He characterized all our conversations as being kind of between two monks trying to sort things out. Two people, as though I already know what the game is. I get it, as they say in the industry, and it just becomes a matter of kind of talking about things that other people aren't really privy to sometimes or don't think about that often. And in that sense, it becomes this rarefied conversation. It was a very laconic thing he said. I don't even remember it fully. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's. But he didn't go into anything personally, or he didn't say he's a great pianist and guitar player. He didn't go into the book I helped write when I was still studying. He didn't go into any of the TV spots I got. Nothing. All accomplishments completely ignored.
I have one last question, just a slight topic shift before we got to call it here. Does and you can relate music to this if you'd like. I certainly would in my story. What is your experience like with romance or a love life?
I'm very rarely lonely, I guess, is the best way to put it. But
is that a one way of saying you have a lot of romances, or is that a way of saying something else?
Well, I don't have problems meeting people, I guess.
Got it.
Yeah, if I feel like seeking it out, I seek it out and I get it.
Got it. Well, Carl, thank you so much for joining me here.
That's an odd note to end on. But...
Oh, well, please...
No, it's fine. This was fun.
Great. Well, I wish you all the best with these upcoming endeavors and continued success, and I look forward to catching up with you the next time.
Great. All right, I'll talk to you later, Dave. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you again to Carl LaMark. If you would like to reach out to Carl, you can send inquiries to lamarkcarl@gmail.com. Thanks again for joining me, man. All the best, and talk soon. That wraps up this episode of Crazy Right with Dave Asher. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider writing a review or rating this podcast. And of course, we would love it if you subscribe. I'm Dave Asher, and I'm glad to be here.